Welcome back. Malawian President Peter Mutharika has been re-elected. Well, according to official results released on Monday, Mutharika was narrowly re-elected, taking 38.57% of the vote ahead of opposition leader Lazarus Chakwera with 35.41%.
The vote count was released after a court battle, with Chakwera's party obtaining a temporary injunction to bar the release of results over alleged vote rigging.
TIPX, once the favorite tool of office workers who had to cover up typing mistakes, has become an issue in Malawi's presidential elections. The correction fluid was widely used on tally sheets in last Tuesday's elections, prompting the main opposition to file a lawsuit. The Malawi Electoral Commission had admitted that TIPX, or a similar fluid, had been used on some results sheets at polling stations. The Commission said it did not supply any correction fluid as part of the election material. The role of correction fluid has become one part of a battle over alleged interference in the election. In this poll, President Peter Mutharika, who heads the ruling Democratic Progressive Party, was fighting a strong challenge from opposition leader Lazarus Chakwera of the Malawi Congress Party. In its court papers, the MCP cited irregularities in the vote counting that point to alleged fraud. Malawi's High Court on Sunday postponed indefinitely the release of final results from last week's presidential vote until any irregularities had been resolved and a third of voting districts are recounted. However, the Malawi Electoral Commission announced the results on Monday, declaring Mutharika the winner of the presidential poll with 38.57% of the vote, ahead of opposition leader Lazarus Chakwera with 35.41%.
We are now joined via Skype by Malawian journalist Dan Mababa. Dan, good evening, and thank you so much for joining us on The Globe.
Good evening, Lulu.
Now, we learned that Malawi's President Peter Mutharika has won re-election by a narrow margin. How have the results been received in your part of Malawi?
Well, I must say it's been a week filled with anxiety back home in Malawi. The cloud of uncertainty that went around. But as I speak now, it's quiet, it's calm. People had expected for close to a week to hear these results. Now that they are out, I know people are still trying to question how did we get here, but like you put it, it was quite a close race between the incumbent President Peter Mutharika and the main opposition leader Lazarus Chakwera. The court battles that went around up until late in the afternoon earlier today. The court making the judgment to say the injunction is lifted, and it was just a matter of minutes. The injunction was lifted. 30 minutes later, the results were announced. So it's been an anxious week among Malawians. I know universities that suspended or deferred writing of examinations because students had protested in light of the anxiety that had engulfed the nation as a whole.
Now, do we know if all the vote counting and verification went smoothly as expected during the elections?
Well, it was not without controversy. The opposition, that's the Malawi Congress Party, was joined later by another opposition party led by the country's outgoing Vice President, Lazarus Chakwera. For the MCP, it was demanding a recount, but on a different note for the UTM, it was demanding an outright nullification of the results. So the recount, rather the counting and tallying of the votes was not without controversy, but then in the end it had to be decided by the courts that ruled against a recount, and in the end the court also vacated the court injunction that restrained the Electoral Commission from releasing the results.
Now, Dan, let's speak about the issue, for instance, the use of TIPX. We know that TIPX is generally used in whether you're doing an assignment or work and you want to cover a mistake that you've made. Those issues or irregularities where officials had confirmed that this was generally used in correcting mistakes. What sort of mistakes were being corrected in official documentation that was used during the voting process?
Well, we really can't get the picture yet as to what were they rubbing off or what were they erasing to put in the fresh numbers. That really has raised a lot of question. It's a lot of people are now are raising or making memes about it because there are sheets, photographs of sheets that are circulating on social media. People making memes about it, but the overall picture is that the Electoral Commission has admitted, or it did admit, that use of TIPX in the election by election staff or election officials was wrong, because the Electoral Commission chairperson did admit during one of the media conferences that they were told not to use TIPX at all times. But then here we are. TIPX was used in this election. It's become a laughing stock that TIPX was used. But then elsewhere, these are the issues that the opposition was raising to say what were the electoral officials erasing, and were these fresh numbers that were written on those sheets really credible enough? So it still raises a lot of questions as I report.
The opposition leader, Lazarus Chakwera, really fought a very good fight during this election process. Has he accepted the results?
He hasn't officially come out to react to the release or the announcement of the elections, but we are getting a feeling that he continues to stay somewhere. He's still in Blantyre. By the way, people may wish to know President Peter Mutharika was only living like less than a kilometer away from the residence of the official main opposition leader, that's Lazarus Chakwera. But he hasn't made any statement, neither has his party made any statement. We did try soon after the announcement of the results to get his party officials to speak to us. They haven't been available to speak whether they will accept defeat, or if indeed they will take the matters further, say to the Supreme Court.
Do you think that the non-reaction so far, maybe there may be some sort of deliberation as to what the way forward is? Are we likely to see a court battle? And with this decision that's already been taken by the courts with irregularities, for instance, like the TIPX issue and, a third of the voting districts having to be recounted, do you think that the courts took enough time to make a decision, or were they pushed into making a final decision with regards to this election process?
Well, I think the basics are that everyone, including the Electoral Commission, seem to agree that this election had irregularities. So that's the bottom line there. But then, as a country, we have the court, and the court are an independent arm of the state. They can make decisions. And on the other hand, we have the Electoral Commission. So the Electoral Commission admitted to have some irregularities during this election, but the court had to make a decision. But coming to your question on whether we are likely going to see any further court battles, I think that's another $1 million question, which only the MCP can react. But we know for sure that the DPP, as we speak, we're already hearing plans of inaugurations underway. And so it would really be quite tricky. And there are a lot of questions that would be raised if the MCP goes to court, that's to the Supreme Court, to appeal against the earlier ruling. But as I speak, like you're saying, preparations are already underway to swear in the next president.
Now, Dan, very quickly, the people of Malawi, you touched on it earlier when we started our discussion with regards to anxiety and not being sure of exactly what's going to happen. Now the results are out. Peter Mutharika has been re-elected as the president of Malawi. How are the people feeling on the ground? Are Malawians excited? Are they apprehensive? What's the mood like?
So it's in two ways. The southern region, where the DPP boasts of it being its stronghold, I could see a couple of people inside the main tally center in Blantyre excited. But then I immediately drove from Blantyre all the way to Lilongwe after the announcement. the mood has been quiet. I had expected to see a ruling party followers maybe chanting or maybe thronging to the streets, something of that sort. I did not see it all my travel from Blantyre to Lilongwe. That's something like 300 or so kilometers. But we anticipate that maybe tomorrow there will be that excitement. But elsewhere, up here in Lilongwe, we have seen, like prior to this, like 2 days ago, we saw communities and citizens, particularly from the main opposition, MCP, taking to the streets, burning tires, engaging in demonstrations, in some cases violent. So it's in two ways. A section of our society, no doubt, it is excited, and you're talking of 38% of our society. So you may only conclude that the 60-something percent would be apprehensive, but then they have not started to show it yet openly.
With regards to, I'm not sure whether you've managed to speak to people on the ground, Malawians themselves, and, just to find out exactly how they feel about this election process and the results thereafter. Have you managed to speak to anyone?
Mm-hmm. I did speak to some women I found along the street during my drive from Blantyre to Lilongwe. Well, it was somewhere in the central region of Malawi, a district called Incheu. This is a district where President Mutharika's running mate comes from. I didn't ask which party they are from, but they outrightly told me they feel like the election has been rigged. It was that general question, and they were so straightforward about it. So, to be honest, those are the people I have managed to speak. But otherwise, the rest of the reactions are coming on social media platforms here. Those backing the ruling party see nothing wrong in the process, but those backing the opposition political parties are really, to put it in any mad and not happy about it.
Now, Dan, just very quickly in wrapping up, what's the way forward now with regards to the inauguration process? How long is it going to be before we see President Mutharika being sworn in as, president of the country?
We anticipate that to take place as soon as possible. That's how I can put it. Like I indicated, we are already hearing plans and preparations for the inauguration and the swearing in. That should not be a problem because, there are people already in power and the processes have already begun. During my trip also up to Lilongwe, I saw motorcycle officers. These were based official. These are on the presidential motorcade. I made part of it, trickling down to Blantyre. That just tells you it will happen anytime, maybe in the next 24 to 48 hours.
Dan, thank you so much for joining us. We'll leave it there for now.